The rain hammered against the windows like an angry fist, each drop a reminder that some nights refuse to let you forget them. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for the last chair, ready to flip it onto the table, ready to close this chapter of her life forever. 23 years. 23 years of brewing hope into cups, of watching strangers become friends, of keeping her mother's dream alive in this tiny corner cafe that nobody seemed to need anymore. The eviction notice in her apron pocket felt like a stone, pulling her down, down, down. She was about to turn off the lights for the final time when the bell above the door chimed, a sound that used to mean possibility but now just meant one more goodbye. She didn't even look up at first. "I'm sorry, we're closed," Maya said, her voice cracking on the last word. Closed. Such a small word for such a massive ending. "I know." The voice was deep, weathered, like gravel smoothed by years of carrying too much weight. "I saw you were about to lock up. But I was hoping. Just one last coffee." Maya finally raised her eyes. The man standing in her doorway looked like he'd been fighting his own battle with the night. His expensive suit was soaked through, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, but it was his eyes that stopped her cold. They held the kind of exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix, the kind that came from a soul stretched too thin, for too long. Behind him, barely visible in the downpour, she could see a small figure in the car parked outside. A child, face pressed against the window, watching. Something in Maya's chest shifted. She'd spent the last month saying no. No to the landlord begging for more time, no to her own dreams of saving this place, no to hope itself. But looking at this man, drenched and desperate in her doorway, she found she couldn't say it one more time. "One last coffee," she whispered, stepping back to let him in. "For both of us." His shoulders sagged with relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. "Thank you. I'm James. My daughter Emma is in the car." She fell asleep finally, after, "It's been a long day." Maya moved behind the counter on autopilot, her hands remembering the rhythm even as her heart was breaking. The espresso machine hummed to life one final time, and the familiar sound wrapped around her like her mother's arms used to. She could almost hear her mother's voice. "Coffee isn't just coffee, Mahita. It's comfort in a cup. It's the pause before the answer comes. It's medicine for the soul." "I used to come here," James said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Years ago. Before everything changed. Your mother made the best café con leche I'd ever tasted. She'd always ask how my day was going, and she actually meant it." Maya's hand froze on the portafilter. "You knew my mother. Mrs. Rodriguez saved my life once." He smiled, but it was sad, distant. "I was a kid, maybe 19, about to make the biggest mistake of my life. I was sitting right there," he pointed to the corner booth, "trying to work up the courage to drop out of college. My dad had just died, left us with nothing but debt. I thought I had to fix everything right then, take the first terrible job that came along, abandon every dream I'd ever had." Maya pressed the button, watching the dark liquid stream into the cup, her eyes burning. "Your mother brought me a coffee I didn't order. Said it was on the house. Then she sat down and told me something I've never forgotten. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. But you have to plant it in the right soil, or it'll never grow." James laughed softly, shaking his head. "She told me to go back to school, to trust the process, to not sacrifice my future for someone else's timeline. So I did. I finished my degree, built a career, a company. Everything I have now started because a woman I barely knew took 5 minutes to care." The tears Maya had been holding back for weeks finally spilled over. She set the coffee in front of him with shaking hands. "I didn't know," she managed. "She never told me those stories. She just kept showing up, kept serving, kept caring. She changed my life by staying open when she could have closed." James wrapped his hands around the cup like it was something precious. "And now here I am, on the worst night of my life, and you did the same thing." "What happened?" Maya asked, sliding into the seat across from him, her own cooling cup of coffee forgotten. James's face crumpled. "My wife died 8 months ago. Cancer. Emma was only 4. I thought I could do it all. Be the CEO, be the dad, hold everything together through sheer force of will. Tonight, Emma had her first school recital. She was a butterfly in the play. I promised I'd be there. His voice broke. I missed it. A meeting ran late, traffic was impossible, and by the time I got there, it was over. She looked at me with these eyes so much like her mother's and said, "It's okay, Daddy. I know you tried, but it's not okay. Nothing's okay." Maya reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. This stranger. This lonely man carrying the weight of the world. This father trying desperately not to fail the one person who mattered most. "You're here now," she said quietly. "You didn't go home to an empty house, didn't pretend it didn't matter. You went looking for comfort, for a moment to breathe before you go back out there and try again tomorrow. That's not failing. That's being human." "I found myself driving here without thinking," James admitted. I needed to be somewhere that felt like hope used to feel. Somewhere that reminded me of when a stranger's kindness changed everything." He looked up, really seeing her for the first time. "You were about to close forever, weren't you? The chairs, the lights." Maya's throat tightened. She nodded. Why? The single word held a universe of questions. So she told him. About her mother's death 2 years ago. About trying to keep the cafe alive alone. About the neighborhood changing, the customers disappearing, the landlord tripling the rent. About the eviction notice and the empty bank account and the crushing, suffocating weight of letting go of the last piece of her mother she had left. They sat in that small cafe, two broken people in a broken world, drinking coffee and sharing the kind of honest, raw truth that usually only comes at 2 a.m. or in the moments right before goodbye. "How much?" James asked finally. "What? How much do you owe? To keep this place open?" Maya laughed, a bitter sound. "It doesn't matter. I can't." $73,000. He wasn't asking. He was calculating, his CEO brain already solving the problem. "That would cover the back rent and buy you a year's lease, maybe more if you negotiate. You could rebrand, rebuild, honor your mother's legacy the right way." "I can't accept. Your mother gave me a $5 coffee and 5 minutes of her time, and it changed my entire life," James interrupted, his voice fierce now, alive for the first time since he'd walked in. "Let me pay that forward. Let me help Emma understand that even on the worst days, good things can still happen. That kindness creates ripples we can't even imagine. That her dad didn't just fall apart, he found a way to honor her mom's memory by helping someone else hold on to theirs." The rain outside had softened to a gentle patter, and somewhere in the distance, Maya could hear a car door open. Little Emma, tired of waiting, was making her way to the cafe door, her small face curious and hopeful. Maya looked at this man, this stranger who wasn't a stranger at all. This father who'd lost his way and found it again in the last place his younger self had been saved. This broken, beautiful human who was offering her everything she'd been too afraid to hope for. "One condition," she said, her voice steady now, strong. "You and Emma get free coffee for life. And once a week, you tell me a story about her, about the recitals you make it to, the small victories, the moments that matter." "Deal." James's smile broke through like sunrise after the longest night. "Deal." When Emma pushed through the door, soaked and giggling, Maya was already preparing hot chocolate. The little girl climbed into the booth next to her father, and he wrapped his arm around her, holding on like she was his anchor to everything good in the world. "Are we okay, Daddy?" Emma asked, her small voice filled with wisdom no 5-year-old should have but so many do. "Yeah, baby," James whispered, pressing a kiss to her wet hair. "We're going to be okay. We're going to be better than okay." And in that moment, in a tiny cafe that refused to die, 3 souls found exactly what they needed: connection, hope, and the radical, transformative power of showing up for each other, even when, especially when, it would be easier to close the door and walk away. Maya flipped the "closed" sign in the window. Then, with hands that no longer trembled, she slowly turned it back around. "Open," it read, and for the first time in months, she believed it.